At dawn, he crossed the parade to find the detail waiting. 25 raw-boned troopers, turned to a uniform ebony of skin, sat morosely in their saddles and watched him with the oblique interest of the enlisted man. Parke Stobo said, "This is Charlie Boren, our guide. Lieutenant Wells, Charlie, new to the command." Charlie Boren accepted Philip Wells's hand with a brief and noncommittal grip. He was small and bleached out and thoroughly unimpressive, this civilian guide, with a ragged sandy mustache laying its semicircle over little lips that occasionally stirred a cud of chewing tobacco. His eyes were palest agate and mostly concealed by the droop of his lids, and he wore an ordinary pair of blue pants and a vest and a derby hat cocked low on his forehead. It was an outlandish get-up, scarcely in keeping with those conceptions of Western plainsmen which Philip Wells had chiefly gathered from current Currier and Ives lithographs. Parke Stobo grumbled a command that swung the whole detail into their saddles. Young Wells put a leg over in the best of style, which was his mistake. The horse simply fell to pieces beneath him, and presently he was flat on the ground, more shocked than hurt. Charlie Boren had seized the horse's free reins and handed them back to Wells when the latter rose. Stobo said, "Not quite like the point nags, Lieutenant. The trick is to climb on fast." The command remained silent while Wells, a beautifully crimson complexion covering his face from eyebrows to Adam's apple, took to his saddle again. His legs clapped the beast with a force that sent echoes all across the parade. There was a little difficulty for a moment, but he really had a decent seat, and when the horse understood this, the performance was over. Parke Stobo murmured another command that held none of the resonance and authority young Wells deemed proper. The detail swung into a column of twos, filing out of Fort Tonto's southern side. The guard at post number 1 came to salute. Riding at the head of the column with Stobo and Charlie Boren, Philip Wells felt a certain lack in this departure. No band music, no colonel to stand by and take the salute, no ladies waving their cambric handkerchiefs. They were merely 25 shapes lumped taciturnly in the leather, riding through the evaporating coolness of early morning, while an ever-present dust already was rising to cloy their nostrils. Beyond the scattered camp of Kaminzin's peaceful Indians on Santa Rita Creek, just outside the post, they swung straight at the brown, barren shoulders of the mesquites. All in the south lay the endless desert, marked by cacti, particularly by the giant saguaro's gaunt arms, and bordered in the deep distance by a faint blue haze. The sun rushed up from the east, and presently, rising through the lonesome ravines of the mesquites, the earth began to glitter. At 8 o'clock, the sun began to bite into the young lieutenant's eastern skin, and they had reached the broken tableland of the mesquites. There was no clear area for any distance. It was a choppy sea of rounded buttes and sudden flinty stringers flung before them, with a scatter of mesquite and thorny bushes here and there. Far off and much higher in the sky stood a peak shaped like a cowpuncher's hat, its sides darkened by pine. "Indian Peak," said Parke Stobo. Fort Tonto gossip had already informed Philip Wells that every foot of this ground was dangerous. The watchword was, if you saw Indian sign, be careful. If you saw no sign, be more careful. He could detect, however, no particular vigilance in Stobo's continuing dismal silence, or from Charlie Boren, who never turned his head and never appeared to open his shuttered eyes. What he did not observe was the constant traveling of Charlie Boren's glance. It reached from the nearby earth forward to the limits of the trail. It lay on the massed mesquite and touched the rising barricades of flinty earth. Behind Wells, the troopers rode with that perfect disposition of weight which comes only from long campaigning. Sergeant O'Mara's Irish face was the color of weathered terracotta, and his black dragoon's mustaches swept hugely across an expression permanently melancholy. Von Lauf, the junior sergeant, was an ex-member of the German Imperial Guards. He had a Prussian neck and an old soldier's stony, angular featuring. Trumpeter Martin was merely a boy, a tough lad from the eastern pavements. The front brim of his hat creased upward, and his cheeks were smooth. Behind these, the column advanced stolidly, half enveloped in its own mica-shot dust. Stobo said, "What's the news from Tucson, Charlie?" "Heard it said Geronimo's back in the dragoons again. Bill Mandis shot Brady King last week on account of something said concerning that Mrs. Cameron. Ed Shafter thinks he's found a load in the Superstitions. The whiskey in that town ain't getting no better."